Hello, welcome to Show Studio's live panel discussions. In these discussions, experts from all parts of the industry discuss and debate the most important Fashion Week shows of the season. Today, in the midst of New York's Fashion Week, we're going to be discussing Peter Doe's Spring-Summer 22 collection. To introduce myself, I'm Robert Leach. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Westminster here in London, and I'm also a fashion writer. Our panelists are all remote, so I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Christine.
Hi, I'm Christine Ha. I'm a women's wear designer based in London, and I'm a 2021 graduate of the University of Westminster from the fashion design course.
And Hanan?
Hi, I'm Hanan Besovic. I'm originally from Croatia, but I'm the face behind the I Deserve Couture, the Instagram page.
And Tuba?
Yeah, I'm here from Germany, and I'm actually a business professional working at a French luxury company in marketing, but I started a YouTube channel that deals with avant-garde fashion and fashion commentary.
And Rudy?
I am Rudy Simba. I am a stylist and consultant. I'm based in between Paris and London.
Great, okay. So does anybody, I mean, I assume you've all done a little bit of research, as have I. Does anybody want to sort of kick off talking about the context or the show? Or Christine, have you got anything to say as a...
I think where maybe I would start is there's a really beautiful handwritten note that Peter had left at the beginning of the show for the audience. And in summary, it was sort of what I would say is like the opening, I guess, setting the tone for what you were about to see. And he mentions a lot about his family, his dad being a chef, his mother being a nail technician, and his background is that he had moved to Philadelphia when he was 14. And he talks about the making of pho as a craft, and I think that is quite synonymous with the way that he runs his collection and the way that he approaches his work. And I think just reading the story, he goes into so much detail about the ingredients. It almost feels as if you're reading a recipe. And I think it talks a lot about his connecting thread through his life and his work. And I think the things that jumped out to me were that he mentioned that this was a collection that was going to be reduced and edited to an essence. I think that was quite powerful. And I think the closing line as well, where he talks about everyone is welcome. You know, he has often talked about the community and is active in the community himself. So I think, especially as an Asian American being in New York at this time during COVID and amidst all of the anti-Asian hate with the rhetoric in the States, I think that was a quite powerful message to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to, you got there quite quickly. I was going to bring you there. I think this whole idea of visibility for Asian American designers is kind of important and very important to him. I mean, obviously they've had a change of government, but the former president's rhetoric has obviously stoked Asian kind of hate crime and stuff. So yeah, so hopefully this is a sort of positive. I mean, did you have anything to add on that as an American Asian designer?
I mean, I think about that oftentimes in my own work. I think when you are somebody, I mean, I think anybody has to kind of think about how to weave their identity into their work and decide how to send that message. I think it was interesting that he, you know, has referenced previously a lot of different topics like horror films, you know, modern art, cars. I think this was the first time that he's explicitly really made this collection about his family and his heritage. And I think the timing is so right. And I think it's quite important to talk about that. I think it really sets the stage for what you see, because when you talk about what's the message of the collection, I think from, you know, the clothing to the casting to the set, I think that's all part of every detail. And, you know, he is about the details. And I think you have to remember any detail that we discussed during this, you know, 45 minutes, like it's all in the context of the story that he's trying to present.
Hanan, how would you like to start this dialogue today?
I think for me, I'm number one, I'm a huge Peter Do fan. And I think that it is what he does, he has elements of all the great designers that we like, in my opinion, at least. Like he has the mystery of Margiela. He's very close to his team, which immediately reminds me of Elia. And then, like he has this aesthetic of Phoebe that everybody just responds to very well. It's very now. For me, it was I think it's an understatement to say that it was the show of the season. It really was the most anticipated show. I'm going to say of the whole fashion month at this point. It is his first runway show. It is the 7th collection. For me, I get a lot of messages on my Instagram. I've never received more messages from people saying that they're proud to be Vietnamese. And for me, that says something. The fact that he named his collection home is 100% beautiful, because he's like, this is my home, this is New York, this is where we're at. And like to symbolize it with the first collection and tie it in so perfectly, love it. There was a change in aesthetics, a little bit at least, like as far as like tailoring, he kind of like went softer. As far as the color scheme, he also went softer, and it is a new side that we haven't seen. But 100% beautiful, beautiful collection. As far as the casting, and I don't know, Peter Do is like one of those designers that is going to stick for a long time. And I cannot say that for a lot of designers. I can say that for Tebe Magugu or Christopher John Rogers, the first people that come to my mind. But we are looking at the new generation of designers that, we're going to see a lot of good work from.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Christina and I talked earlier about this, and we feel he has a longevity. Absolutely. Yeah.
And a following at this point, like for somebody after like 7 collections to have such a huge, I mean, like, I said it was Monday, Tuesday, Peter Do Day. Then we're going to get Thursday, Friday. So I think that like in general, you're going to see a lot from this guy and from his whole team, which, it is about community for him. And that is 100% obvious. He doesn't put himself in the spotlight. And every time that you talk to him, he's humble and he's nice. And that is something that humble doesn't go with fashion, not very often. And when it does, it shines very bright. So
I definitely, and further to what Christine said when she started, I think that this is a sort of a new kindness, a new sense of community, hopefully a change. Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, I noticed the fairly recent interview with John Galliano, and he talked much more about his team than he ever has. The team were visible around him. He referred to them, deferred to them. I think it's sort of interesting. I think those egos are sort of dropping a little, and people are crediting those around them. Yeah.
Well, as they should. I think that we are always focused on the designer, and that is wrong of us, I think, as a fashion industry. I was fortunate enough to go to Valentino Couture show, and that felt like, when they say like they're like a family to me. When designers say that, and we're like, okay, yeah, okay, cool. But when I was at Valentino show, for example, like you saw, Pier Paolo waited for everybody from the atelier to come together to take a picture. And I'm like, okay, I see that. That's Olivier Roussin also, he has parties for people that are leaving his atelier. Like we are seeing kindness in fashion industry. It just shines brighter now, I think, at least.
I feel exactly the same. Yeah. And Tuba, how would you like to begin your rhetoric today?
Well, I think I like the first topic we were talking about, which was about what he was influenced by and what the storyline behind this whole collection is, which is definitely his homeland, and the people around him and the family. And what I found most surprising about this collection was actually, despite the design, that it actually was about family and him in person. I mean, if we look at the items, we see that he used incredibly personal aesthetics of himself on the items itself. For example, like the tattoo that he had on that blouse, it was so personal. Like we said previously, he had handwritten notes. It was all inspired by his homeland and people dressing the way they did. And I felt like we saw here an evolution if we compare this collection to the ones he had previously. It was very bold, very strong. He had to manifest himself. He, of course, had the experience he had at Celine. I do not think that we do him any justice if we always compare him to Phoebe or anything. I mean, he was there for 2 years. It's fine. He definitely got influenced, but I think we need to move on and see that he definitely does his own things now. And we saw that, as I said, he got in his first collection, in my opinion, it was way bolder. And that was what I loved about it, actually, because that was something I was missing, you know, seeing a very strong woman out there. And after Phoebe, there weren't many labels. He's being compared to The Row, etc. But to me, Peter is showing a stronger woman. I mean, and as he says in his own interviews, he wants to create clothes for women who are working, who are strong and independent. And that's something we see. But I also feel like in this collection, which got a lot softer than the ones we saw previously, people were kind of like, okay, this is getting maybe a bit more commercial because people need staple pieces, stuff they can wear daily. And the things he did previously were like maybe a bit more fabric, a bit thicker fabric, things that are maybe not as wearable as they should be, which I actually love. But I don't see it that way. I see that he has shown us what he can do and that he's extremely good at it. I think nobody can judge or say anything against the quality or craftsmanship when it comes to Peter. He just has the possibility, or he just used the opportunity to show his personality or what he was, you know, he tried to show us something of his own persona. And if we look at his social media, for example, I mean, we all know he's very anonymous. He's not sharing a lot. We know that he likes to cook for his friends, which is extremely sympathetic and cool. And I love it. I also want someone to cook something for me like once a week. But I mean, he's such, as we said, it's a culture of niceness, and he created this resilience against the industry, which is very cool because we do not see that anymore. Everybody is, you know, dependent on this industry and tries to get in somehow and fit in, but he didn't. And he literally had this people called family around him for 10 years, for a decade, and even had them in his lookbook. I mean, I'm pretty sure he didn't do that for financial reasons, but taking the people you love the most, put your clothes on them and shoot that and say, this is my lookbook, is like one of the best things I can imagine, actually. And it's worth so much more than having like the best it models in there. So these are the moves that I also look at, and not only, okay, maybe the fabrics have changed, maybe not every item is everyone's favorite, but despite that, I have to say I'm very happy with the collection. But we also have to see like what is the message. And in my opinion, Peter Do used the opportunity with this show, with the runway, to tell us something different this time. And this is something I loved about this collection. To me, he established himself with the previous ones, and this time he's like, okay, now you can get to know me. Now you can get to know who I really am. And yeah, I think he did that brilliantly.
Great, thank you. And Rudy?
I'm literally gonna side with everything that's been said. I think that the main points that Sam spoke to me, first, knowing the brand, but also seeing this collection is really that feeling of, I don't know, showing more, being more personal, being more open. And also, it's like, for me, it's part of this, I don't know if you can hear me properly, okay. It's part of this new generation, as we say, of designers who are also speak for themselves for a community, they represent something, and they're also, I don't know, like from the references, like we all love fashion for that as well, but it's not always about, I dreamed about, I don't know, the 19th century courtesan and I did my collection on this. It can also be something very simple and relatable, as, you know, it's a moment with my family and or something that I've read. And I feel like it's the ego, but also it's just the fluff that sometimes we love about fashion, that can be brought out and just be like, this is the collection that I did because it reminded me of my family. The as you mentioned earlier, there was like the notes that he gave out at the beginning, and there was, I don't know, a note about the flowers that is embroidered in some of the looks, and especially on the last, on the final look that is, I think, a memory from his family, or the mom and the dad. And it's also super refreshing to kind of take a break from all the extra fluff that we love about fashion, and also just keep it very simple in the message, but also in that is also represented in the style in itself. As everybody mentioned before, like we're used to very like strong and kind of structured silhouette, something very starch and something very imposing. And then now you have all those like fluid material. It's soft not only in the color palette, but also in the way he layered some pieces, or they layered some pieces. And yes, there's something very flowy about it, but also essential, pared back, that for me makes total sense with his message as well. The idea of keeping it simple and essential, but also getting rid of extra fluff, which is funny because I don't think he doesn't stand as the designer who already, like, he's known for his minimalist aesthetic. So it's not that you would put him in a extra type of box, but it's very interesting for me to see how, from a minimalist point of view, you can also still look for simplicity, even more simplicity, even more, I don't know, yes, something I'd say essential and core. And I feel like that was very well represented in the collection. Also to have just all those beautiful kind of back to work officey looks that he's known for, but with something that also reminds a little bit of, I don't know, resort. It's still summer, or there's something very soft about it that calls out to, yeah, like summer, or and then you had like the Manhattan skyline. The weather was good as well. So I don't know, it was very much going back to the office, but also being outside again, which I think that's what everybody is craving for, and also trying to represent the best in their different collection. I love that was his choice, that he mixed both of those elements in the decision of doing the show there, but also just to show for his first show, actually, to have something open air. And yeah, the pictures are beautiful because then you see the garment flowing and but still have that aesthetic of obviously something structured. And also, I also liked a lot the fact that there was less, I don't know, a different work on strong material. Like, I don't know, even like what he did with denim. I remember from the last collection, there was like the ripped denim that he mixed with the structure look. This time it was just like ample, again, simple, but simple in the best way. Work on the denim, work on the layering, work on the and also the choice of the neutral colors, but then the invitation of something a bit fancy as embroidery. And yes, that's something. And also obviously that idea of community, the idea of everybody signed off at the end. And it's a bit like, as everybody mentioned earlier, it's the death of the superstar designer who works alone and he's the genius. And again, we all love this.
Not the reality of either.
Exactly, that's the thing. You only as good as your team is, and I feel like he's very open about it. He's very, even like the last campaign that he did, and he actually had member of his team modeling the clothes. And I don't know, it feels right, but also it feels good to see it. Yeah. Also, it feels weird to actually feel like, oh, we're in a new era when niceness is being celebrated and kindness is being celebrated, when
fashion can be
always been that.
Yeah. And Tuba, you talked a little about the lookbook and the casting. Should we talk more about the casting for the show? I was struck by seeing Anne Duong, for instance, who I remember as a model in the 80s, and there she is, kind of a year younger than me on the catwalk in New York. Fabulous artist she turned into since. But Christina, I think you recognized a couple of people.
I think speaking back to what we've all been talking about, this theme of community, I thought that it was really from the top down. If you look at all the details, like it's all in everything, in the casting and everything. I think Maggie, who was walking in the show, he met at Celine. Teddy, he met during a Derek Lam fitting. He had some other, even the first look, who was worn, I think, by Steph Shu. She actually did the music for the show. So she's not only a musician, but she's walking in a show. And I think that just goes to show how it's just such a web and like an interconnected community of people that have done all sorts of things and met him at different points in his life. And I think to see them all on the same catwalk and all coming together like this to support him for his first show is really beautiful and personal. And I think that's why it was so emotional for everyone that was on set.
It also goes to show that he just doesn't take the experience, he takes the models from the houses also, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think like as far as the models go, you know, it was pretty diverse, and you know, it's 2021. That's what we're about. That's what fashion should be about, at least. But
Absolutely.
you know, like I think we will see diversity in New York. When you get to Paris, the word diversity is just going to fade out slowly. Mm-hmm. And that's what concerns me. That's why we need New York, and that's why we need designers like Peter Dow. You know, to show us, you know, everything is beautiful in fashion. So it's just your point of view that if you don't find something beautiful, it's fine. It's your opinion. But, you know, like these models, like you can see these girls walking down New York Street. You can see them everywhere. So I think as far as the casting goes, brilliant job.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Do you have anything to add, Tuba, to the casting?
Well, yeah, well, I was very happy to see the casting as well. As Hanan said, it's very diverse. I think it's changed, and actually I have to say it hasn't been something that popped immediately in my mind because I'm kind of used to it. I think we're spoiled now this season, maybe because we see it just more often. It is actually just expected to be like that. Sometimes I also feel, not in this collection, but in some others, that it can be also forced, you know, that it feels like, okay, we're doing this because this is kind of a trend, but this is a trend we should still like all be at, you know. This is a trend that can go viral, and that needs to be it needs to be used in every collection, and I definitely think it might take a little bit more time in Europe, since like Paris is way more conservative than New York. I mean, New York is like the for us Europeans, like from our perspective, in New York, everything is possible. You know, underdogs can get into the runway somehow. It's they're doing a bit more functional fashion, also like cool and functional fashion. It's more like the minimalists coming from there, like Helmut Lang. I don't know, like Derek Lam, Philip Lim. It's kind of functional, minimalistic, but cool. This is the sense we have here from New York, and that's also why I think like being diverse and different is way more easier to establish in New York, and that's why it's definitely needed. And Paris might take a little more time, especially if you're an old house with an old heritage. I feel like there it's even harder. So I was also very happy also to see Oiko Bashtash, she has been like a Gucci model that I also love very much, and seeing her at the Peter Do show also made me pretty happy. So yeah, I think it was very good. I didn't know actually the first model, but I was mesmerized. She's so cool. She was the coolest. But that's about the show. But yeah, about the casting.
Great. Rudy, any thoughts on the casting?
Same as well. Again, aligned with everything that's been said. I love first everything that involves Maggie Maurer in it. Like she's just, I don't know. She's
everyone's favorite. Yeah.
Also as a person, but it's just like seeing her there, and also knowing that there's only a few brands that she likes to work with. She's now at the level where she actually decides the brands that she wants to work with, and it's always a personal story that she has with the designer.
Yeah, there are some very lovely backstage images after the show with Maggie on them.
Yes,
on Instagram that are kind of touching. Yeah, you know.
Exactly, and
She wants to be there.
exactly, yeah, and that's the feeling that you have, and also, as we say, like it's again 2021, like it's still crazy that we still have to talk about diversity on the runway, when really and truly that's wherever you are, you step out in the streets, and that's the diversity that you hopefully see. So it shouldn't even be a topic of conversation still now, but I feel like especially with post pandemic situation that we're in, and then back to like a real New York Fashion Week as well, for him to do his first show and have that diverse cast, as everybody said, like people that you see in the street, people that come from different areas, you have legends, you have I don't know, it also feels very community centered, and also feels very modern, and at the end of the day, that's also, I don't know, like the cool New York girl, or whoever she is. It feels good that she looks like any of those women, and also, again, it's not a casting that feels forced. I don't know, there's something very authentic about choosing those women to represent the brand.
Oh yeah, I think it really could only have been a New York show. You know, even though, despite the setting, I mean, just everything about it. I think you talked about the sort of ease of wearing, the commerciality, you know, the clothes that women want to wear, which I suppose he learned from Phoebe, maybe. We'll talk about Phoebe later. We'll have to talk about Phoebe later, won't we? But
can I just say one thing? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you say that he learned that from New York, maybe? You know, like when we're talking about like comfort,
I think he's much more American designer than obviously a more American designer than Phoebe. But I mean, he was back. I mean, he saw how Phoebe built a collection. He must have learned from her.
Sure. I'm coming from like the aspect of, you know, I'm thinking of Donna Karan, I'm thinking of Calvin Klein, you know, this like comfortable clothes, like you don't, you know, like even like Calvin Klein is like, let's make clothes that like you don't want to stand out, you just want to look good and feel good and be comfortable at the same time. So I do think that Phoebe has a lot to do with his aesthetic. As Tuba said, like it's weird that, you know, this kind of like Phoebe thing is following a couple of designers, and people are, it's kind of like, I hate to say it, but it sounds like a negative criticism, you know, that they're like, oh, it's a Phoebe aesthetic. Well, Phoebe aesthetic works. So these, you know, him and Daniel and anyone who was with Phoebe, you know, they're smart because they're like, well, everybody wants this, let me jump on this bandwagon, you know, and so it does make sense. So I think that Phoebe is a huge, but New York and like this American, like American love for comfort is such a huge thing, I think, but as far as Peter. Sorry to interrupt you though.
No. Very valid points. Christine, anything to add?
I mean, I think the whole aesthetic, I mean, he talks even about like the makeup, how it was like a DIY, do it in a hurry. It's about the woman on the go. It's supposed to be easy. It's not meant to be constricting. It's meant for the woman that has to go, you know, to a lot of places and look good and effortless at the same time. And so I think that feeds into the whole idea of comfort, but then also kind of thinking back to that original message of like the welcoming nature of this collection, how it was meant to be comforting. I mean, that's sort of like the theme of the show, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I think interesting, despite his social media success, he's not obviously not searching for the meme. He's not producing the showpieces to, you know, to get front pages, and that feels kind of very New York too, in a good way. You know, there's no desperation for the meme or the front page or any of that stuff, is there? Apparently, any.
100%. I 100% agree with that. I think that tells you how confident he is in his clothes. You know, like a lot of designers do have to rely on the meme and the moment, and you know, and like that it thing in the show. He's like, no, I'm fine. Like, this is my clothes, and you know you're gonna love it, and I'm 100% loving that.
You know, I think confidence is a good word there. There's no sense of desperation or it's just a quiet confidence. Yeah, yes, very fair point. How do you feel, Tuba, about that? And anything to add?
I think I also feel like I do not know. Sometimes, for example, when we see that he's like that anonymous and not trying to stand out at all, sometimes that can also be interpreted as shyness, for example. Like maybe it's the opposite of confidence, actually. But I feel like he's definitely very confident about his designs, and he can definitely be that. But I also interpret it as like not as shyness, but like kind of like respect, or not wanting to show your face, but let the clothes do the work, like do that a bit more. Because I think he was pretty popular on Tumblr, etc. as well previously, before he started and everything, and he could definitely have used his presence there to engage his brand, I guess, but he chose not to. And I think this is like more like a characteristic about him. I think this is like his persona, and this is something we see in the clothes again. So yeah, I think it's definitely confidence, but I also think it's like respect towards the people around him, to not stand out. When he doesn't want to give interviews on his own, but with his crew. I think this all shows why he doesn't want to stand out as a person. So yeah, I think that's very interesting. So this is also why I was surprised to see such a personal collection. Also with the embroidery, I was actually shocked when I saw embroidery. I was like, okay, wait, isn't this a Peter Do show? So what is this? We don't see any sharp lines. I was expecting just to see drapes and deconstructed, drapes and lines and sketches on the coats, which I absolutely love. But
I noticed
embroidery,
basting and stitching too.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. I love this duality, and this is something we see like throughout the collection, the duality of two countries, his homeland, the US, the anonymous life, the big collection, and then we see like this fragile, vulnerable flowers and the very strong constructed sharp lines of the clothes. And I think that's beautiful. I got like some Dries van Noten visuals in my mind when I saw that, and I thought it was beautiful. And also like the blurred flowers on the breast, which like my first idea was the reference from, it's probably not, but it seems like Raf Simons Dior menswear, when he had this blood stain on his breast. It's that very famous. And I my first thing was like, okay, this is a blood stain. Oh my God, this is a Raf Simons reference. But then I realized it's just a beautiful flower, which seems to be blurred. And I think it's beautiful, and I love this duality throughout his whole collection, and that this is actually a concept. So yeah.
Anybody want to talk about anything? Should we talk about the accessories? But I think they're quite interesting.
Yeah.
I think the biggest statement piece, we're talking about memes and statement pieces, for me was one of the bags, I think Look 20 maybe, with this huge kind of structured bag. It was a fabulous bag. And nowhere did he feel he needed to push that idea that he did with the bag with the clothes, which I think obviously considered. But I do love that big bag. Any thoughts about the bags, Christine, or the shoes indeed?
Not specifically. I love the drama of that. I think it's kind of like an understatement way of making a statement just through size alone and the visual of that. But the bag itself, I think, is still quite simple in shape, and it's not fussy or anything. It's like, if you're on the go, you'd want to throw all of your things in there, and you'd be able to do everything you need to do with one bag.
Absolutely, yeah. It's almost a weekend bag, but a weekend handbag. But great piece. Hanan?
Last night he showed, I think that after the show, he went and showed a couple of pieces like up close. As far as the shoes goes, there's these beautiful shoes that had like, I think it was some kind of crystals on it. It was kind of like, I didn't, that's also the thing that kind of surprised me about the collection. There was 3 pieces that were, that had Swarovski crystals on them, which I never thought Peter Do. And now I'm like planning to sell my liver. So I'll get all 3 of them. I'm fine. But it didn't come as it came as a shock. And from what I read is that he tried to reference water, with like glittery, there was like these like huge, like how do you call it, like sparkle? I don't know what's the word for it, but it doesn't matter. But
guess.
these pieces these pieces were just gorgeous. As far as the bags go, I think that he introduced 2 new bags. I think one of them is called Hinge. But they're beautiful. You know, it's a big bag. Who doesn't like a big bag? You know, and it's structural, and yeah, I think that as far as the bags go, I think he's going to be great. The jewelry was done by Tiffany's. You know, for me, it just worked. I think that they filled the collection very, very nice.
Yeah, I think on my personal social media, I think the Swarovski coat worn by Anne Wong was kind of the hit. Everybody got what a great coat. Everybody loved that coat. Yeah,
that's what I keep telling everybody. Everybody's like, no, it wasn't. I'm like,
oh, it is on mine. It is on yours. Any favorite pieces? Any standout pieces? Any pieces that hit on your social media channels? Tuba?
Mine, okay. Well, I love the bags, but I'm a shoes person. So I was definitely checking out on the shoes and I love them. Especially, I mean, we see plateau boots more often now. I mean, it is again for me, when I think of plateau boots that are like straight, I have to think of these Van Noten, but we also see that at Marc Jacobs and Prada, etc. But I love these ones because they seem to be a bit more minimalistic. And I don't want to call Peter Do a minimalist, actually, because I think that doesn't do him justice. I don't see him as a minimalist. I think he just liked to get rid of the excess he had in his previous collections, but he's definitely not a minimalist. I think he's not doing just the mandatory stuff, but more than that. So, but in terms of shoes, I just like that it's very strong, very bold, and still kind of has this natural aesthetic that it doesn't seem like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like too strong. So that was definitely something that I liked about it. And I think it's also the right path for him to concentrate more on accessories, because I think that's something he's very good at. And if we look at the Row, for example, I think the ready to wear is very strong, but we see definitely more shoes and handbags of the Row down the street. So I think he definitely has a lot of potential here, and is on the right path on concentrating on that. And I would also give a little bit of light for one of the shoes. Hanan, we can just just
don't worry,
have the same blood group or something. So if that works out,
we'll figure something out.
Accessories wise, Rudy?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of accessories as well in general, even like in my own personal styling or what I want to offer to my clients. And again, like it's something that for me, everything kind of makes sense. The obviously you're gonna have, not on all the looks, but you're gonna have big stompers, strong shoes, especially if you're showing your collection that actually is a bit maybe on the softer side and like gentler silhouette. And it's kind of a poetry, like it's maybe a softer silhouette, but then you still have the big boots because you're obviously still in New York and you need big boots in New York. And also with the bags, we all know kind of what eat back can also bring to a designer, and I always find it very smart to focus on like a strong offering on accessories, because at the end of the day is like a punctuation to a language that you're already putting out, but also it just does the work, if that makes sense. And
it's something that everybody can buy into. Yeah,
exactly. And also, I really thought like the juxtaposition of this massive bag and all of the fact that all this bag were also crossbody, it not much as a restraint, but something that you add up when everything in the collection is about getting rid of and less of anything. So I thought it was great.
Great. Chris, anything to add to sort of wrap up? We're kind of running out of time, but is there anything you feel you need to?
No, I think one discovery I made today is that I didn't realize how involved he was in charity as well. I think it's difficult to ignore sort of all of the facets of his brand, not just on the runway but also off. I was reading that he was part of Heart of Dinner, which is serving meals to elderly East Asian community there in New York, and so I think it's nice to see that his sense of community extends, you know, outside of the studio and the atelier, and that it's really about inclusiveness for everyone.
Yeah, that inclusivity and kindness and really kind of, yeah, come through, doesn't it? Which is, yeah, a nice new trend. Well, let's not dismiss it as a trend. A nice new beginning, shall we say. Hanan, how would you like to kind of wrap up today?
I think that I'm looking forward to what's next. Let's just put it that way. Because I think that, like, for the first show, he set the bar very high. I don't think that he's going to go below that bar. So I think it's just going to get better and better. I read a long time about him, that he's like, I like to think of him as a problem solver. You know, he would love to ask people like, what is your issue that you have with this item? You know, is it a coat or a bag? They would tell him, he would work around it. That's the
I've heard of him listening quite carefully to customer feedback. And I think, you know, that's again, that's that sort of lack of arrogance, I think is a great thing. Yeah.
Correct. He's like, well, you know, like I have this, you know, a group of people that want to tell me what they want. It would be ridiculous of him not to listen. Yeah. You know, he's a smart guy that knows what he's doing. I mean, his whole team also, but you know, we're going to see a lot more from Peter Do in the future. Definitely.
Absolutely. And Tuba, how would you like to?
Well, I think, well, I can't wait for the coming collections actually, because this one has been different than the other ones in my opinion. And I'd really like to see where this way is going. So will he get a bit more bold in the next collection maybe again, because this one was inspired by his homeland. Also, I mean, this whole lockdown situation we're in made us a bit more comfortable. He got influenced by many different aspects. And I'd just like to know like where this is going. But I think we are just witnessing here something pretty big. And yeah, it was cool to experience like the first collection, the first runway of Peter Do. And I'm pretty sure that we see him more often in more stores over the coming days. So yeah.
Thank you. And Rudy?
Same as well, very excited about what's to come, but also just before thinking of what he can bring, I'm just really happy with what he just brought. I think it's just such a beautiful collection to sit with, and also remembering that it's still such a young designer and such a young brand, to be able to already see the different collection and see that there's like a clear evolution and a clear conversation that he's having, as it was once said, like with his customers, but also with his team. And yes, I'm just really excited to see what he's gonna do, but also just appreciate where he is. And I don't know, it kind of also feels nice that this has been the most talked about shows from New York, when we're talking about, you know, the back to Fashion Month, back to New York, back to everything. Like it's such a literally back to life. It's such a nice show and an exciting brand as well to represent. I guess what we've been missing, I guess, from New York, and yeah, as an American designer as well, especially with the Met that's coming, and it's all about, you know, the legacy of what is American fashion. And I'm like, we're literally seeing this new generation of designers who are redefining what is American fashion and global fashion, obviously. And it's just very, very exciting, and a nice environment, and a nice time to sit around and witness this. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, I'd like to thank all the panelists and our studio audience, and thank you all for watching. For more extensive Fashion Week coverage, be sure to visit showstudio.com. And if you're watching via YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below. And we will see you next time. No trolling. Thank you. And thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.